So this item received 65 favourites on our Vinted account, and this item received 30 favourites, but neither of them have sold for quite a long time. So what are buyers actually doing when they are favouriting an item? So after looking at this a little bit further and after doing a bit of research on places like Facebook posts and comments, Reddit, everything like that, I actually noticed a little bit of or quite a few actually, interesting patterns of what might actually be happening. If you're new here, my name is Gemma, and me and my fiance James run a business where we sell luxury and vintage items online, and we like to share, all the different things that we're trying out to build our business and just things that we learn along the way. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit of not a mistake, but even just something that you probably do. I know I am guilty of doing this, is that when somebody favourites your item, you automatically think it's going to lead to a sale. So you'll probably know that feeling of when you've uploaded a new item, or a few new items, and you get that flurry of notifications of all these people favouriting your item, and then you think, oh great, somebody's going to buy it, somebody's bound to buy it with all these people favouriting it. But then nothing happens. Another thing that I don't think is unreasonable to expect is if so many people are favouriting this item that they would maybe send an offer to you. However, the opposite is usually the case, at least that's with us anyway. When we do get a lot of favourites on an item, it's usually us that usually goes in and then sends an offer to the potential customer. So let me know if that's the same with you. But yeah, we often find that people will favourite something, but that's where the engagement kind of stops. And I've kind of touched on this before, where this is where I think the way that Vinted works is very clever, because it is very similar to like different social media apps such as Instagram and TikTok and things, that they really like the engagement side of using the app. So obviously, I mean things like people are very, and I mean people as in sellers, you're very sort of interested in how many views your item gets, how many favourites your item gets, and again, that's kind of where you get pulled in. I mean, I'm very guilty of this as well. You're constantly going back to check how many views or how many favourites your latest items have had, and you get kind of pulled into that kind of feeling of wanting, that engagement. However, you probably, this is what this whole video is all about, is that even though there is all this engagement going on your items, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to a sale. And this is where I think Vinted is very different from the likes of eBay. Like, we probably get about the same amount of sales on eBay and Vinted, but on eBay we have a lot less engagement, so a lot less views, a lot less favourites. Nobody talks to you on eBay. Like, there's not much chat going on in the messages or anything, at least not with us. And however, we still make pretty steady sales there, probably about the same as on Vinted, but I think it's because it's a very different platform. Vinted, as I said, is very similar to social media. It has even like a For You page when you first of all open the app, whereas on eBay, I feel like that's more search based. You have to actually kind of search for the item, and I think that's where it is very different. And Vinted, as I said earlier, being very clever by tapping into that kind of dopamine hit that you get from seeing so many views and so many favourites on your items. But as I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that those items are going to sell anytime soon, or that the people that have favourited them even want you to engage with them. So this kind of leads into the next kind of thing that I want to talk about, is that a lot of buyers or potential buyers use their favourites as a wish list. They are not necessarily using it as like saving things that they are intending on buying. They're maybe using it as a little bit of a, few different types of wish lists, I suppose. Maybe they're looking for one thing and they're kind of saving all the different options, which I think we already know that that's a possibility. But I also think that people favourite things for inspiration. So maybe they're looking for a particular type of, piece of clothing or an accessory. They're not quite sure which style or item they're wanting to go for, but they'll sit and save ones that they like the look of, almost like a Pinterest board, so that they can then go back and go through what they've saved. So I think in those types of cases, that those are the kind of people that a lot of the time they probably won't answer your offers, or if you do send them a little follow-up message with an offer, they're probably going to ignore you because they weren't actually favouriting the item with the intention of buying that particular item anyway. They were just favouring it because they liked the look of it. Like, I've even had people favouriting an item and it's in the wrong size, and they have been quite upfront and just said, oh no, I was just favoriting it because I like that item, but it's the wrong size for me. So it's just so that I suppose it's like a little reminder to them. Obviously that's really nice that they message back and let you know that, and then you can just kind of leave them and move on. But yeah, so I do think there are a lot of people out there that's how they use their favourites, and obviously it can be a little bit frustrating as a seller because, as I said in the earlier topic, you're kind of expecting these favourites to hopefully translate into sales. So another way that people might be using wish lists and things is they're maybe saving things for payday. So we've actually had that a few times when people have saved something and then they've said, oh, I need to wait till I get paid. Obviously that's totally fine. I mean, that usually sounds like to me they are intending on potentially buying it. As I said before, they might be comparing different items, so comparing prices and things like that. This is where potentially sending a little offer or doing a price drop might just kind of push you into that, sort of over the line a little bit, so then they actually buy from you. So that's just to know that that's another way that people would probably be using it in their favourite lists. And they might just be building outfits. So again, this is kind of going back to the sort of using it almost like a bit of a Pinterest, saving ideas type of way, that they're actually just building different outfits and looking for items that they might put together, and they might not even buy everything that's on their favourites list. So I do think it's important to know that if there are a lot of buyers using their favourites like this, that they aren't quite ready to buy yet, and this is where obviously it becomes really important to look at what can we do as sellers to kind of convince them to buy. And obviously this is where we then start looking at things like dropping the prices. And this kind of links really well to another reason why, or another way that different buyers might be using their favourites, is they're actually waiting on a price drop or an offer. So that's where, I mean, it kind of hits two birds with one stone. You might be wanting to, sort of target the actual customers who are actually waiting for a price drop. They favourited something, they're hoping for a little offer, they're hoping for you to drop the price. So that would be something to keep in mind. And then you've also got the other lot of potential customers who they're maybe not quite ready to buy yet, but sending them a little offer or a price drop kind of pushes them over that line from not being ready to buy to actually thinking, oh, actually, I think I will just grab that. And it's obviously quite good to highlight that the amount of favourites you've got in something is really valuable, because it does tell you how much interest there is in an item. And it can also signal to you that if you have an item that has obviously got quite a lot of views, a lot of favourites, but why has somebody not bought it? It might give you a little hint that maybe is something you might need to do to the listing. If it's not to do with price, and maybe you have sent out offers, you've reduced the price maybe a little bit, I'm not saying anything crazy, just maybe a few pounds, like a nice little offer, and you're still not getting people buying, then that might be a little bit of a signal that there's maybe some other reason why people aren't buying. And that kind of leads us into our next thing that we're going to talk about. So I mentioned in a video, 2 videos ago now, talking about how to sort of improve your sales. So one of the main reasons why buyers might not be buying, even though they favourited the item, is that they still have questions. So they might still have questions about maybe the measurements of the item, they might have questions about the overall condition of the item, they might have questions about the material, the fabric, the fit, all those kind of things. So mentioned, as I said in a couple of videos ago, that if buyers have questions, majority of them just don't ask. The majority of them would scroll by and they'll go and find a listing where they actually have all their questions answered, or more of their questions answered, so then they're more comfortable buying from that person. So as I mentioned before, if you do notice an item that has a lot of interest, a lot of views, a lot of favourites and things, but people are still not buying it, and you've maybe sent out a few offers, maybe reduced the price a little bit, and you're still not getting a sale, then I definitely think it's time to look at the listing itself. Even looking at the photos as well. Are the photos clear enough? Do the photos match what you're saying in the description? Do the photos show, all different parts of the item? Is it showing the labels, all that kind of stuff? And as I mentioned before, is your listing got all that information in it? Measurements, different fits, if it's clothing, materials, fabrics, the condition, a little bit more detail about the condition, and if it's like a branded item, a little bit about the authenticity of it. Because as I said, if there's any questions that that buyers have, they won't ask. Like, most of them won't ask. I mean, they'll get the couple that do, but you know, the majority of the time they'll just swipe on buy, and especially if it is about authenticity, because a lot of the time they'll just assume it's fake, even though it's not, because they just think, oh, they've not got the label, they don't show the authenticity, it's probably fake, and they don't even bother asking. So another thing that might be happening as well, if you've noticed a lot of favourites, a lot of interest in your item, but they're not buying, even after you've done all these things, you've checked your listing, you've maybe checked the photos, you've sent offers and things like that, it could just be that the customer has found the same item or a similar item somewhere else that they'd rather buy. And it could be that they've maybe bought it because it's slightly cheaper. So that might then signal to you to maybe do a little bit of research of what similar items are selling for on Vinted, or even if it's eBay, if it's other platforms you're using. Or it might be a good idea to look at the listings of these similar items. And that again is where the whole unanswered questions thing comes in. So if you notice, wait just now, you know, they're selling it at the same kind of price as me, or even more than me, and you know, why are people not buying my thing, my version of it? But then if you go into the listings and you notice, well, actually their photos are really good, they're really clear, they've got a lot of information, they've got the, you know, they've got the measurements, all that kind of stuff, that's probably why, because people will pay more for, you know, sort of more confidence in the item. If they feel that the item is definitely authentic, not going to have any problems with the fit, with the measurements, all that kind of stuff, they're probably more likely going to buy from that person than the person that's maybe not been super duper clear. So even though we've been talking a lot about if you have a lot of favourites on your item and you're maybe not getting the sale, I'm really hoping this has been useful to, you know, help you push customers over that little line to actually get the sales, and obviously to help you look at making your listings as good as they can be. I know that's something that we're always like looking to do. We're not, you know, perfect. There's always things that we could be improving as well. But it's important to remember that favourites and sort of how many people are favourite in your item is still important information. It tells you that there's interest in those items. It tells you that there's maybe something, maybe signals to you there's something in your listing that's maybe holding people back a little bit from, you know, just pushing them over into that buying mode. And it also gives you a little hint of what types of items you might want to then purchase in the future to add to your store. So there's definitely a lot of valuable information from looking at things that have got lots of favourites. So I'd love to hear, what is the highest number of favourites you've ever had on an item? I think for us, the two that I mentioned there aren't the highest we've had. I want to say the highest that I think we've had has been over 100. I can't even remember what the item was. I think it was like a wallet or a purse or something, but over 100. So let me know in the comments below what's your highest number of favourites you've ever had. So if you found the video useful, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos. And you can also turn on the notification bell as well, and I'll see you in our next one. Bye!